Okay, so those are the things I would do, elementary level and secondary level. It's pretty good to, if you have a procedure in the beginning of the school year, it's a pretty good idea to follow it up and not say, oh, you know, with 3/4 of the way we could all relax. Because that's when you're going to have issues cropping up, I think. Okay, other questions about this? All right. So, we talked about making a command, using a desist, using proximity control. If the strategies you use don't work, like my 3 strikes and you're out, 1, 2, 3, whether I've done a mild desist, that's usually my first thing that I do. The second thing would be proximity control. If that misbehavior still continues and you have that 3rd strike, there is something called isolation and exclusion. And your textbook calls them forms of exile. You know, yesterday when Carla was talking about the no fun zone, go to the no fun zone, that was an example of isolation and exclusion. For isolation, you want to remove the student from annoying other students. But that student should still be part of the classroom activity, or being able to listen to you, or being able to see the video, or whatever it is. So when you're thinking about your classroom setup, you should have, I always had a chair in a corner next to my teaching period, next to my, where I would teach, my teaching station. And with the isolation exclusion, I would say to the child, all right, 3 strikes, come and sit over, take all your things, come and sit over here. I had a table here too, so they were able to take notes. So they're away from annoying anybody else, and that's really what you're interested in. I mean, if that child has made a choice to misbehave, fine, he's made that choice, but don't annoy anybody else, because that's not fair. They want to do their work. You know, the other students want to do their work. There are going to be some occasions that this is not even going to work. In that case, you really use the exclusion piece, which is, really away from the action. Go sit over there, and I will come and see you as soon as I get everybody else started. And then you could go have a separate conference with that student. Michelle had her hand up.
I was just going to ask, what would you do if you asked a kid to come over to this seat and he just said no, or she was like no, and just wouldn't move?
Right, okay. In that case, I would spend the rest of my time just with proximity control over here until you get everybody else ready to go and do their activity. In that case, you just ask that student to stay. And then you have that little conference with that student. The bigger a deal you make of this, remember you have all these other little bodies looking at what's going on. That it may be a test, it could be a test of you and what your level of tolerance is and how much everybody else can get away with. The more you make a big deal in front of the whole class, the worse it's going to be. Then everybody gets off task, and that's not what you want. You should not get into any type of a verbal interaction like that. And Michelle is right. There are going to be kids who are going to test you like that. Corinne.
My principal had a policy where if I had a student that really acted out, I could send him to the principal, but I never did.
Here's what I think. I think especially as a new person coming in, as a new teacher coming in, the less you have the principal, assistant principal, dean of students involved in your discipline issues, the better off it is. You don't want to be known as the person who can't handle students in his or her classroom. It's very nice that there was that policy. We had a policy also that students could go down to our dean of, I don't know what it was called, dean of students, dean of discipline, or the assistant principal or the principal. In my 20-year career, I think maybe I sent 3 to 5 kids down. Yeah. Handle your own problems as much as possible. Because remember, if you're sending a student out of your library classroom, who's taking that student down to the principal? That student is going by him or herself. Are you sure they even got there? And what are they going to do between here and there? So it's not a good policy to just send a student out of the room. All right, other questions about that? Okay. Okay, any questions about the authoritarian approach? All right, let's talk about the next 3 approaches very, very quickly. Intimidation, permission, and the cookbook approach. The intimidation approach emphasizes the use of intimidating teacher behaviors. Don't use it. Okay? This is where a teacher really emphasizes the fact that they are the one in authority and there is going to be absolutely no nonsense, but they do it in a very, very harsh way. Either through harsh desists, you know, where their voices are raised all the time, or through sarcasm or ridicule or disapproval. Now you may say, who would do that? If somebody wants to be a teacher, aren't they supposed to really love these children and really love what they're doing? Well, sometimes the answer is no. But I do have a funny story for you. There was a teacher who actually started about the same time I did, and he just recently retired. Who, 6th grade teacher, who was, he taught, at this time he was teaching math. And he had a unique personality. And he taught our gifted, our highest level in his team of math. He had this unique personality where he could make believe he was making fun of the kids, and they loved it. He was one of the best loved teachers for years in this building. But a student would come into his room, and as they came in, you know, when you're greeting students, he'd look at them and say, "Who dressed you this morning? Did your mother do your hair?" You know, and he'd go on as the kids came in, and he did this as a teaching strategy. Those kids, because they loved him so much, and he did this in such a humorous way, he was very, very effective. And what's more, the parents loved him. The parents just said, "Oh, he's so wonderful. Oh, I want my child to have him as a teacher." And one day, one of the kids, remember he was teaching very bright kids, one of the kids decided to give it back to him and said, "Mr. Whoever, who dressed you this morning? Your socks don't match your pants." He took such offense to that he stood back and he says, "Don't you ever talk to me in that tone of voice." So he could give it, but he couldn't take it. Another funny thing that happened with this, we had a new assistant superintendent who was doing walkthroughs through the building. And that year we had a new assistant principal. So the assistant superintendent was observing the new assistant principal as they were walking through. Well, this teacher was doing his ridicule, sarcasm thing in his class. The new assistant superintendent is walking through the building, stops, turns to the new assistant principal and says, "Have you said anything to this teacher about how he's talking to the students in this room?" And the assistant principal says, oh, that's just Mr. So-and-so. He does it all the time. The kids love it. The assistant superintendent said to the new assistant principal, take me to your office. And he sat the new assistant principal down to say, this is not to be done again. That you are not doing your job unless you tell that teacher that he will never speak to the students in that tone of voice or using the words that he used. The next time that I come and do a walkthrough, you'd better make sure that that teacher is behaving himself. So this became a union issue. And so we worked it out, and the way we worked it out was, let us know when the assistant superintendent is doing a walk through the building, and this teacher will behave himself. This works for unique personalities. It doesn't work for everybody, and my basic advice to you is don't use this as a strategy, okay? Because you don't know how your students are going to react. And you don't know who's watching you. All right, so that's intimidation. The other approach, the permissive approach, really is the opposite. That was the first story I was telling you about the 7th grade math teacher. Oh, I love my kids. Oh, they can do whatever they want to. If they want to get up from their chairs and sit somewhere else, then that's okay. That's not effective either. All right, now the third approach is the cookbook approach. And that's the approach of what I call old wives' tales. Not that every teacher in a faculty room is an old wife. But this is like the advice that you would get in the faculty room. If teachers talk in faculty rooms, and they very, very often talk about kids and problems and the ways that they handle some of these problems. Very often you will go into a faculty room and you'll listen to the conversation and you can say, well, I'm having a problem of, and then describe what the problem is. And you'll have teachers say to you, oh, you have to do this, or you have to do that, or you have to do that. These are nothing standardized. It's just, well, this worked for me in this situation, and whatever. And you know what? It might work for you. But there's no thought behind why you would use it. So by all means, take advice if you want to. But do know that it's better to have a personal approach to management rather than reacting by using one of these cookbook ideas. Okay?